we need to take things on ourselves too. Make sure that you're stocked up with things that clean, astringents. Rubbing alcohol. I have witch hazel. I think that does something. It does something. I don't know. But anyway, I've been taking vitamin D, vitamin C, right? Vitamin C is good for immunity, right? I don't fucking know. Take your vitamins and take this seriously. Is what I want to get across to you guys. Take this seriously.
Take our black asses out of here. Won't you take our black asses out of here?
All right, let's talk about the coronavirus and COVID-19. Now, about 3 months ago, there was an outbreak. The coronavirus, COVID-19. The coronavirus is basically the one of the viruses that cause the common cold. However, 3 months ago, there was a super form of the coronavirus that leads to basically an upper respiratory issue. And that disease that causes that upper respiratory issue is called COVID-19. Now, in Wuhan, China, 3 months ago, there was this huge outbreak, and it basically rocked China. And as you saw it start to, propagate out there, it started to propagate in different parts of the world. Currently now in China, thank God, they've found a way to kind of stem the tide, if you will, of COVID-19. There are no more new reported cases, or they're very low new reported cases. I think only 19 last I heard. But I think as of today, there are no more new reported cases. And the people that died, but, they're basically getting rid of the disease, it would appear. However, the epicenter of the disease, it started in Wuhan, China, like I said. It seems that the epicenter is moving, and it can now be considered in like Italy, because what's happening in Italy is crazy. They declared a state of emergency. No one's really doing anything out there. No one's really moving around, doing anything. And the healthcare system that they have in place has been influxed with people. And it seems that doctors are having to choose between which clients to treat and which not to, due to limited resources. And it's a really effed up situation. Now, I want to talk about how America has been dealing with it. Okay, here we go. Donald fucking Trump. Initially, he was saying that it's not that big of a deal. Why? Because all of the news that's been coming out of China and around the world saying that the disease is spreading has been threatening stock market prices. So a few days ago, there was a historical plunge in the market. It lost 1,800 points in one day, which is a huge downward turn. And it seems to keep hemorrhaging money, the market does. And Trump, his whole approach initially was just to say, oh, everything's fine. Everything's fine. So why would a president who knows that there's a pandemic, that, his CDC is telling him that shit's spreading and it's getting worse, why would he get on TV and say, oh, some people go to work and they're fine. Most people are fine. Most people are fine. Because he wants to shore up the stock market. Instead of doing what's right for the people, again, you have a president that is so concerned about stock prices and looking bad for his new election, because his whole thing that he runs on is a great economy, right? And so if the economy goes bad, he's at risk of losing his presidency. So he's worried about political outcomes as opposed to worrying about people. And then that's where you get people like Rudy Gobert from the Utah Jazz that were just touching the microphones and shit. You remember that? Rudy Gobert was the first NBA player to get the coronavirus. He was tested and found positive. And a few days earlier, he was like playing with the microphones after a press conference with the media. He's like touching the microphones and shit. I think that Donald Trump saying that the disease isn't as big as we think it is leading to people not thinking it's as big as it is, and then the disease getting worse in America. Not only that, but there's been very little federal progress towards, granting funding to make sure that people can get tested, to make sure that there are tests out there. I mean, looking at this corona stuff, I'm seeing here that compared to other countries, we're not testing nearly as much as we should, especially considering the amount of motherfuckers that live here. We have 329 million American citizens. We're doing about 23 tests per million citizens. Japan is doing 66. UK is doing 347 per million citizens. These numbers aren't great, but they're better than the lowest, which is ours. We're testing the least people. And again, we have the highest population. We're testing the least people. These other places that are testing 347 a day, like the UK, they have 67.8 million people. So this is why I have a political channel. Like, you know, these outcomes affect us. People hate politics. I get it. It's bullshit. A lot of it is bullshit. I'm interested in it because the decisions that they make affect us. And here's a good example of this. You saw when Trump came into office, he did a whole bunch of federal cuts, in essence, right? He disbanded the group that was supposed to look after infectious diseases in America. That's under the CDC. He disbanded that group. Why? Let's look out for ourselves first as a nation. Why are we caring about the stock market or oil prices? Why do we care about that? Why are we cutting the things, the services that we need to live a healthier life, to live a life that's not affected by a huge pandemic? We're not as concerned about that prospect, but we're more concerned about the markets and another thing too. The Fed, which is the main America's bank in essence, right? The Fed injected $1.5 trillion into the economy to stave off fears of the market crashing. Now that didn't help. The market continued to crash after they did that. But think about that. And I know I'm doing a piece on Corona, I know. But the political implications are undeniably important here. Think about that. The federal government just dumped $1.5 trillion into the economy, into staving off the fears of Wall Street. Now, why doesn't anyone ever ask how much that costs? Do you know that about 10% of Americans own stocks? So why is it that we're so clear and so vigilant in our attempt to help the stock market? $1.5 trillion just injected into the stock market. Nobody cares. No one asks any questions about it. How do we pay for it? But when it comes to, and I'll talk about this too. There was a bill that went across past Congress, went across to Trump's desk. Went across to the Senate. The Senate ran by Mitch McConnell, the Republican. And this bill, what it would call for is to provide emergency funding for any American that needs to lose their job or that needs to self-quarantine. Make it so that they don't lose money because they're not working. So in other words, the feds will cover whatever money you lost during that time of, when you were sick, when you had to quarantine. They'll cover that money so that you don't take a loss because of this horrific disease that we're all dealing with. We're all sharing the burden of dealing with it. But we can't share the burden of compensating people that might take losses due to it. But 1.5 million just gets injected right into, or 1.5 trillion, just gets injected right into the economy, and no one asks how do we pay for it? Isn't this amazing? Donald Trump decided to cancel all interest on student loan debt because of the coronavirus. Why do we have student loan debt in the first place? Maybe if we listen to Bernie Sanders' message and covered student debt for everybody as a united front, as a united country through our taxes, we fund it all together, we wouldn't have to worry about providing relief on just the interest of people's debt due to a disaster like this. So the point I'm making is that we all run to socialism and social projects where the government funds something for the society at large. We all run to that in an emergency. But when we're just talking regular life, no. It's socialism, we don't care.